Ladies and gentlemen, the head of HHS, Robert F. Kennedy, has now come out and said what all the evidence already showed, what we've been saying for almost 5 years. COVID was a premeditated attack to bring in a private, corporate, global government, and the main ringleaders were Bill Gates and Anthony Fauci. You're about to see the historic proof right now.
Event 201 is a simulation that they did right before COVID hit, and it was a drill for how to handle pandemics. But it didn't do the things you would think they would do, like how do we fix the VAERS system to make sure that we get good data? What they talked about was how to turn America into a totalitarian state.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've known RFK Jr. has been an incredible mind and one of the top experts on how the globalists are carrying out their depopulation operation through the poison shots. But I had missed a clip of him from July of last year where he lays out, and you're about to see it at a big conference, the fact that there were over 20 drills run by Bill Gates and Fauci in the UN to use a virus to bring in martial law and a new civilization and a new society, a coup. Now, we knew from the UN for decades they would use a disease X to do this. It's how I was able to predict it. So I already know everything Kennedy is saying is true. We've already covered it for years. Event 201, right before they released COVID, and of course, Operation Lockstep, and of course, SPARS 2025, 2028, all of that. But even though I'd read his book, The Real Anthony Fauci, I didn't know that Kennedy understood the fact that it was all premeditated and done on purpose, which of course it was. So here's the clip of him saying this. But you have to understand, he's a top environmental lawyer, very, very smart. He's obviously known this all along. But here's the point. He's now the confirmed HHS director. And now Trump's saying we may just ban the COVID shot all out. Borla is totally panicked, about to be stripped of their immunity. He was at the White House and got booed yesterday, the head of Pfizer.
We also have the head of Pfizer here, so I want to thank him. One of the great people, one of the great businessmen. Thank you, Albert. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Who, by the way, said right during COVID, don't worry, vaccines aren't going to be our money. It's going to be an increase in cancer we know is coming. And of course it did, because in the studies of these mRNA shots in rats, it just increases it off the charts. Just literally turns off your body's cancer defense to the DNA. So here's the short clip, and I follow everything, and this did not go viral back at the time where I would have seen it. This is incredible. And then after the clip, the biggest developments yet on the poison shots are all coming out in prestigious studies. And quite frankly, it was even worse than I thought. So watch this, write down everything he's saying, look it up for yourself. It's all true. But it's not Alex Jones saying it and other scientists have had on. It's the head of HHS. Globalist, you're going to prison for crimes against humanity, for genocide.
How many of you have heard of Event 201? Yes. Event 201 is a simulation that they did right before COVID hit, and it was a drill for how to handle pandemics. But it didn't do the things you would think they would do, like how do we fix the VAERS system to make sure that we get good data? What they talked about was how to turn America into a totalitarian state. How to impose censorship. In my book on Fauci, I've been able to find 22 of those simulations. And they have been practicing this for year and year. It's all sponsored by the CIA, as I demonstrate. Fauci and Bill Gates play key roles in them. Bill Gates called Fauci in 2000 to his home in Seattle, $147 million home, 40 acres on Lake Washington. He sat Fauci down in his library and he said, I want to propose to you a partnership. You and I work together to vaccinate the world. The story in my book tells exactly how they went through that. And the story of these simulations is critically important because it was the way that they prepared. They didn't just have a few people involved. They had hundreds of thousands. Cops these were all top secret. police officers in every community in this country, healthcare workers, first responders, were all drilled in this: how to censor, how to silence, how to impose tracking and tracing, how to do control. So they all went through these drills again and again, and it was a way of drilling and practicing a coup d'etat against American democracy. All of the techniques they use, I've spent a lot of time studying the CIA because my family was in a 60-year fight with them, and I wrote a book about that battle called American Values. But I've read all of their manuals, and they have techniques for going into indigenous countries and causing chaos, shattering the societies, destroying the economy, creating social distance between people so that there's no unit cohesion. And then when everybody is demoralized and destroyed, coming in with a centralized control and imposing, as they did with all of us, they locked down America in a hostage taking. And they impose something that is part of their technique, which is called Stockholm Syndrome, where the captive becomes grateful to their captor and identifies with them and understands, comes to this belief that the only way that they can save their lives is through absolute obsequious obedience to their captors. And all of these drills were intended to impose and to induce that condition in the entire public. And I'll tell you one other thing. The CIA did a series of mind control experiments back in the 60s and 70s called MK Ultra and Project Artichoke. And one of the famous experiments was called the Milgram experiment. And the Milgram experiment, and you guys look it up, Milgram experiment. What they did is they brought volunteers from every walk of life, college professors, construction workers, everybody. They put them in a room with a doctor in a lab coat, a figure of authority. And he would tell them, turn up the electricity and shock the person who's in the next room. That person was an actor. And they would tell him, turn it up higher, turn it up higher. It went into the death zone. 67% of the people put it into the death zone, even though many of them weren't crying at the time. They were begging the doctor not to make them do it. And what they found was that using authority, particularly doctors in white lab coats, 67% of the public will violate their own conscience and do what they're told. All of this was orchestrated. They put doctors in charge of America, speaking of authority, never showing us any science, but ordering us what to do. And as you read my book, you're going to see all of the direct CIA involvement. And I named the person, I named the officers. Year after year, that were directly involved, partnered with Bill Gates, partnered with Tony Fauci, creating these scenarios.
Is that there is no question that there will be a challenge to the coming administration in the arena of infectious diseases, both chronic infectious diseases in the sense of already ongoing disease, and we have certainly a large burden of that, but also there will be a surprise outbreak. And
Now remember, back in 2017, he said, don't worry, Trump will be hit by a new pandemic. Then we had Hotez a couple months ago saying, don't worry, the new president-elect will have a new pandemic crashing down on him, probably bird flu or something else.
Starting on January 21st, Mr. Bloomberg mentioned H5N1. That I'm really worried about. We're seeing sporadic human cases, no human-to-human transmission yet, but that could happen. That's just the beginning. We have another major coronavirus likely brewing in Asia. There's still more. We know that we have a big problem with mosquito-transmitted viruses all along the Gulf Coast, where I am here in Texas. So we're expecting dengue and possibly Zika virus coming back, or a Puche virus, maybe even yellow fever.
And now they've announced out of Wuhan lab discovered it, the last place that released it, a new COVID right on time. But the truth is coming out in a new Yale prestigious peer-reviewed study links COVID vaccines to alarming new syndrome post vaccination syndrome that makes your whole body collapse, heart attacks, you name it, just absolutely hellish. And then a new jaw-dropping peer-reviewed study finds vaccinated children are 170% higher risk of autism. The peer-reviewed study also found that vaccinated children had a 212% greater likelihood of developing other neurological disorders, including ADHD, epilepsy, seizures, and brain inflammation, and tic and learning disorders. Oh, and what did the FDA warning fact sheet of possible adverse reactions say in October 2020, months before they rolled it out? Myocarditis, blood clots, epilepsy, all the same stuff. They know what they're doing. It's all been tested in animals. There's all the secret documents that Trump's talking about now that are inside the federal government, HHS, CDC, that are now going to be coming out. This is their population control program. And they make you sick, and while you're sick and dying, they suck all the money out of you, especially kids they can make sick. The families and others will really sell the house to take care of them. These are monstrous killers that make Joseph Mengele look like a choir boy, ladies and gentlemen. Take this report, send it to all your legislatures, all your attorney generals, flood the FBI with it, call the White House with it. I mean, we already have the HHS head in there, but we're going to keep this on the front burner so they can't successfully launch another pandemic, and so they're brought to justice for what they've done. Thank you all for your support, and thank you for Elon Musk empowering X for us to be able to get this information out and bring these tyrants to justice.
I mean, I'm not even worthy to be bringing you information this powerful. And I hope that you pay attention to what we cover here minute by minute. Because I've had chills since last night. This just confirms everything else we've already researched. A Rockefeller study envisions future dictatorship controlled by elite, millions being killed, mandatory quarantines, checkpoints, the end of the family, everything that's in the other documents, but this dovetails with all the other Rockefeller Foundation documents about the GMO food to sterilize you and the forced vaccines and the hell we're already living in that's just going to continue to intensify until we take our governments back from these eugenics madmen. But that story is up on prisonplanet.com. The question is, will you have the courage to really do the research yourself? Because I don't want you to just sit here and hear me make these claims. These people are so arrogant that they write policy papers, so many of them, that they're producing these policy papers and reports and white papers so fast that you could never read them all. It is an open conspiracy against you and your family. I pray to God, I pray to my Heavenly Father, Jesus Christ, every night to give me the strength and the will to be able to face this horror and to give me the strength to carry on, because I know why a lot of you don't want to look at this information and just want to comment on the YouTube videos or on message boards that I'm a liar. I know why, because it's scary. You're not going to be able to go to the ball games anymore. You're not going to be able to just go out and get drunk with your friends. You're not going to be able to just, go out and enjoy yourself all the time. The only chance we've got of beating this scientific dictatorship, this creeping death that takes its time to incrementally enslave you, mentally, psychologically, physically, spiritually. The only way to defeat it is for the rank and file of this planet to realize that you have a choice to make on what your destiny is going to be. Once you face this information, once you've consciously admitted it to yourself, it will take over your life. It should take over your life. Well, I mean, what else? What else could it do? We've got to get past the artificial stigma that the controlled corporate media has been putting out for decades ahead of their unveiling of planetary dictatorship. They all talk about how we need a police state to carry this out.
Canada and the United States are going to work in lockstep to display the seriousness of our commitment at both home and abroad.
Win, lose, or draw, you need to choose a side.
InfoWars. Tomorrow's news today.